Power Move Makers. This series was created with a simple goal in mind, to bring to the table high-level executives, successful entrepreneurs, and just all-around inspiring human beings. Not just focusing on their success, but more important, shining a spotlight on the road they traveled to get there. Now, this week's guest, I'm very honored to have him on the show. He has directed some incredible movies out there, and one of my personal favorites, in The Lincoln Lawyer, which happened to star one of my personal favorite actors, Matt McConaughey. He's a writer, he's a producer, he's a director, and from what I'm told, he's just an all-around smooth and genuine guy, and that comes from a very credible source in my man Wayne Barrow. So shout out to Wayne Barrow. Welcome to this week's episode of Power Move Makers. Mr. Brad Furman. Brad, what up?
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me. That's the best introduction I think I've ever received. Since you're recording this, I am going to probably have to use that and place it some. And if anybody's doubting me, I'll just play it over and over again. But no, Wayne is one of the absolute greatest. He is such a gem, and I'm very humbled to have built the friendship and the relationship that I have with him. And I could not have made this film, City of Lies, that sort of led us here to get to talking without him. He's a producer on the film with Miss Wallace. But if anybody knows Wayne, he's like a tremendous mover and shaker. He gets it done. He's not a man of words. He's a man of action. And, in Hollywood in particular, there's a lot of talk. And Wayne is someone who, he will tell you what he's going to do and then he will do it. But the best thing about Wayne is that you'll go to ask him to do it. And then before you even asked him, he already told you he did it because he's 4 moves ahead of you.
Yes, he is.
And that's the thing that has blown me away. And, swift and quick and silent, man gets it done. But truthfully, outside of my love for Wayne, thank you for all the kind words and the love on The Lincoln Lawyer and having me here. It's a real honor.
Nah, it's a real honor for me. And I'm be very, very honest with you. I have worked with Bad Boy since the mid-90s. City of Lies, I know that's why we're here. Incredible movie. Loved it.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
But I had to call Wayne offline. Wayne, did he get it right? Great movie, but is it great for Hollywood or is it accurate? Mm-hmm. What am I walking into? Because depending on what Wayne said, the interview goes very, very different. And Wayne said, Shawn, it's right. He was like, Brad paid attention to details. He is the real deal. And tell him I said so. I said, you know what? Say no more. Let's get into it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think with this story, there were multi-layers and levels of responsibility. Responsibility to being a part of Big's legacy and how it's represented. The effort, which is why I referred to him a lot, most of the time, as Christopher Wallace, to humanize him. I think that we live in a world where we lose sight of the humanity of our icons. Christopher was a father and a son to a wonderful mother. Same thing with Pac. The influence that these two men in particular had on me was profound. The influence that they've had on the world was and is and remains beyond profound. Their legacy speaks every day through their music and all the gifts that they've left behind. So I felt there was a deep responsibility to humanize them first and foremost. Secondarily, as a fan of just cinema, as a fan of excellent journalism, in looking at a movie, whether it's JFK or All the President's Men, I felt this was a modern day JFK of, one of the greatest human figures of all time. Also, obviously, one of the greatest Black figures of all time. And to think that his story had unfolded where the end of his life was at the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department and a much larger cover-up and corruption and these larger failures of the institution this is obviously very heavy, very weighty stuff where you're pointing direct fingers at things. And I felt that the book that I had read now at that point over 10 years ago, maybe around a decade, it would have been irresponsible to simply be like, okay, here's a book. I'm going to just tell this narrative. So I did a full-blown reinvestigation of the case. I worked with Sergio Robledo, who was the Wallace Civil Counsel's lead detective. I worked with Perry Sanders, who was their lead attorney at the time. I worked with Randall Sullivan, who wrote the book Labyrinth that it was based on. I worked in conjunction with the Poole family, and I reached out to Miss Wallace, who later introduced me to Wayne, and got the Wallace family on board, and then later also made sure that there was nothing in the movie the Pac estate wasn't okay with, and made some adjustments for them. But as far as the case, reinvestigated the whole case, top to bottom, up to down. And then the last word for responsibility, sorry, such a long answer, was understanding for me who I am, where I'm from, and that, it was important that I tried to tell the story from the perspective of a fan, but in the same breath, understand that I am a white Jewish male and that I was not interested in making a movie that exploited Biggie and or exploited his murder as well. Because we see a lot of raping and pillaging of Black culture. And I have no interest in being a part of that, because the foundation within which I am from and live by is built upon the inspiration and influence of Black culture. So I had to honor that in the film. And I knew there was no way to do that, if you take it full circle, without the support of Miss Wallace, without the support of Wayne, without talking to, Forrest and people who've walked in the shoes of being, Black individuals in our society and community, and really hearing their voices and letting their voices be a part of the fabric of the film, because they're going to be able to speak to things, share things, give point of views on things that I will never be able to do because it's not my experience. So it's very sensitive to all of these things. So there was a lot of boxes that need to be checked, connected to that word responsibility. And, that's a bit of my story on that one.
I'm listening to you, and you clearly are a man of integrity. You clearly, before you take on a project, you do your due diligence. You came into this, it feels like you wanted to get it right. I want to go backwards for a second. I know you're from the East Coast. Long before you went out to Hollywood, become this big wig, you grow up in Pennsylvania. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay. Are you a fan of hip hop? Where does Big and Pac even fall into your life? Were you listening to their music first before you ever went to film school, before you ever got involved with this project? Is it personal for you in any way?
1,000% personal. So it's funny, actually, because I was asked this question and probably should have given the answer I'm going to give you earlier today, but it was 6 a.m. when I did the interview. This probably started for me. My pops listened to a ton of Motown and a ton of music and Black culture, but really for me, hip hop, rap, and then soon thereafter R&B came from my cousin Michael. He was a DJ on Power 99, and he was 19 years old. They put him in the midnight slot, and he was.
What did he go by? What's his DJ name?
Mike Fresh. Fresh. So he was doing that. It was like basically he had started as an intern, worked his way through the ranks. He was DJing parties. He was like rapping, scratching, doing everything of that era and time. And then they gave him that slot on Power 99. And he was my hero. He was everything to me. He passed away when I was 19, a few years thereafter. But when I was very young, I would say 5th, 6th grade, he gave me the UTFO tape. He gave me LL. He was giving me Bobby Brown. I was getting access to things from him. And then also he worked with this cat, Gene, And they used to, they DJ'd parties together everywhere, but a lot of times they would go into the hood and, him and Gene would do their thing. And, for whatever reason, they'd be like, come, and I'd carry the records, the crates, and I would just kick it and spend time at the parties and just be there as the kid behind the DJ table. So I just spent and had an experience early on that was like deeply impactful and influential on my life through my cousin. I mean, my love for Bob Marley, all of these things came from him because I was really in awe of him. And they, man, so like, and then actually from a filmmaking, just connecting the dots perspective, because I got into basketball, that became an extension because mostly everybody I was playing was brothers. So they were listening to all the music, and I fit in because I understood the music from the perspective of being a fan and was able to connect with these kids beyond the basketball court. And then there was a level of respect because I could play. So there was a lot of mutuality that was experienced through my friendships, and it wasn't really about race. It was just about us as kids and human beings hanging out with common things and things that we all loved and that we were a part of. So that was an interesting thing. What I was about to say was I watched Do the Right Thing, and I had always been a fan of movies, but I watched Do the Right Thing, and there's that very famous scene in the pizza parlor with John Turturro and Spike Lee playing Mookie. And basically Mookie's given Turturro, some shit because he's saying to him like, you're fans of the greatest people. Who are they? And he starts naming all these black artists from Prince and, so on and so forth. And Mookie's telling them, they're black. And he's using the N word, which I don't ever use. And I'm very sensitive to that. And he's saying, no, they're not. And they get into this crazy exchange because he's basically showing you and representing in that film and that little anecdote the depth of impact that these great athletes and entertainers have had on the world, regardless of your race. And I was the first movie that I had ever seen that was like almost like a documentary to me, in the sense of like it spoke to things in my life and it spoke to relationships I had. I mean, like I would sit and like scrub my shoes, like trying to get my first pair of Air Jordans. When MJ came out, they didn't even have Air Jordans for my age. You had to get a Sky Jordan. And I remember going to my pops, I was like, look, I got to get the Sky Jordan. I remember it was $100. And my dad was like, I'm not spending $100 on a pair of sneakers. He would tell me, I would wear, he goes, I wore Converse when I was a kid. They were like $5. He's like, I'm not getting, and it was like, I was relentless, I mean, little things that were like a part of my life were all in this movie. And that's what changed my perspective on filmmaking, storytelling. That's what inspired me to be a part of trying to do something in my life that I, genuinely wanted to leave some type of mark with my time here, in a sense, because my cousin couldn't do that because he passed away. Also, I saw how hard my parents worked. My mom from, much more impoverished background, my dad from, middle upper class. But from both of them, I learned a great work ethic. I learned a great work ethic through basketball, but I also was like, I don't want to put all this time into work if I don't love what I do. And since I wasn't going to ever really get paid to play, get good money playing basketball, and I wasn't going to be an R&B singer, the truth of the matter is like film seemed like the next best option. It really was one of my loves, but not necessarily my first love.
Really?
I think if I could have been like Casey or JoJo and Jodeci, I was in, you know what I mean? Like those guys, like Wanye and Boys to Men, like those guys, those crooners, those guys who could sing like that captivated me. I was always blown away by them. So that's a bit of my story of like where it began. Pac was introduced to me. I had Rolling Stone magazine. I was at Emory freshman year. I transferred later to NYU the year after I went for basketball, and I had the Rolling Stone open, and there was like a 1.5-inch picture of Pac and his bandana tied backwards. And I can't tell you the what, the when, or the why, but I was like, that's the coolest dude I've ever seen. There was something about him that like jumped off that that page to me. I became obsessed with Pac. I was researching Afeni, the Black Panthers, how he was raised from Baltimore to the West Coast, to, you know, his mother being, you know, pregnant with him when he was in prison. Well, she was in prison and she was pregnant with him, and anything I get my hands on. You know, I made my first short film at school. I put "Holler If You Hear Me" on the track, and you know, I just was obsessed. And then Biggie came to me because best thing I ever did was transfer from Emory in Atlanta to New York, because the rise of the hip hop in the 90s was one of the coolest things that I had ever seen, been a part of, witnessed. And there was a moving party. Well, there was the Coop that we would go to off of Third Ave near the Bowery. There was, you know, the Blow Pop was that moving party. And I don't know why Big got up on stage. I didn't know who he was, but I had never seen anybody captivate an audience, move a crowd, do the things that he was doing. And I was just blown away. And that was my first introduction to seeing Christopher, and was obsessed ever since. So all of these things led me, as you can see. So I tried in making this movie, you know, as a fan. And that's why City of Lies represents so much more to me than a movie, because it's so much bigger than me. You know, I wanted to make a movie for the fans. I wanted to make a movie that fought for justice and truth for Miss Wallace, Wayne, their family and friends. Same thing for Pac, extended beyond that. So, you know, these were things that weighed on me, and it's been a long road, to say the least. And that's a long story. So thanks for your patience.
Nah, great answer, great answer. To all my movers, if you love educational and inspirational content just like this, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. But most important, if you know anybody making power moves just like you, share it. Now back to the video. And I was about to ask you my next question, but I think you answered it for me. I was gonna put you on the spot, like bigger Pac, like, but it sounds like I think I know the answer to that.
No, you know, they're so different. You know,
Come on, Brad, you're not a politician.
No, they're so different, man. I'm a fan of both mutually and equally. Honest to God, I'm telling you my truth. I really am. They both moved my universe in different ways, man. They really did. And you know, they're so different. Like, you know, when I say that, you know what I mean.
I do.
I mean, Pac has a poetry book, you know. I mean, and it's, but Biggie's impact on culture and it's just. I mean, and the way that he made you feel and brightened up your day, and like Pac made you think, and these things are melded together in a way that just, the way they challenge you as individuals differently, it's just, they really are equally meaningful. I'm gonna go with Big, since I'm wearing my Big sweatshirt.
There we go. I'm gonna let you.
I love both those men. What?
I said I'm gonna let you off the hook with that one, but I'm glad you got your Big shirt on. Okay, yeah. So tell me, I don't live in your world. How does a script like this come to you? Is it something you sought out? Is it something that somebody introduced you? Give me an idea of the way Hollywood works, and then how did you get locked into it?
Sadly, a script like this doesn't ever come your way. I have stories that I created, many of which deal with Black culture, my experience in those worlds, some that were actually brought to me. And 99.9% of the time in my whole career, you are basically told that, you know, basically Black stories don't travel internationally, and therefore they can't get financed, and you're not going to be able to make that movie. And it's a very, very sad tale that's told over and over again. And it's an uphill battle that I've been fighting for a very, very long time. Things are slowly beginning to change now due to larger social movements and Black Lives Matter, and a requirement that's becoming on Hollywood to pay attention and to deal with these things. But the reality is, I think, as we both know, change takes time, and we're very far from change. I think that was obviously the larger point in, the 3 guilty verdicts for Derek Chauvin, just saying, you know, this is a step in the right direction. This doesn't resolve the larger problems. And unfortunately, that does apply in many ways to Hollywood. Hollywood is a business. Hollywood is about making money and exploitation of these things. And it's a little bit of, if you build it, you know, it'll come kind of thing. And the requirement was, I kept trying to get this property. Now, the interesting thing, and I've never really thought about it in this perspective, but the book is written by a white male and a prominent white investigative journalist. It is told through the perspective of this white male. I never saw it as this white savior story by any stretch of the imagination. But the reality is the book was prominent. The story was prominent. And I think there was definitely a lot of people trying to get their hands on it to make it. For me, and I'll tie this into the Lincoln Lawyer for you, I have had a very unique history of trying to figure out, because I didn't understand with art and making things, how much of like your own maturation and where you are and the marriage of the two sort of begin to define who you are and what you make and how the world sees you. So for example, when I went to make the Lincoln Lawyer, I was very young, and I was in my early 30s. And for me, the role of Earl, played by Lawrence Mason, the driver, it was a very crucial element to the movie because Earl had his ear to the streets. Earl was the one listening to the 90s hip hops, Gang Starr. And as a result of that, you know, I had, by the way, I have to find a way to get this because I have a scene in that movie where I have McConaughey in the car rapping to the Ghetto Boys. And,
Get out of here.
Oh yeah. And it's a lot. It's the scene that I was like, if I could put in a movie where I have McConaughey, you know, rapping to this, like it will blow your mind. Cause he says like, you know, my hands are all bloody from punching on the concrete. Like when you're watching Matthew do that verse, I remember like, we have to get this in the movie, but you know, things get cut, things happen. I was steadfast in my belief that the way that Mickey Holler's character learned the streets was through this really savvy street cat, Earl, who was giving him the information and using, you know, because rap is this, like, you know, hip hop is storytelling. It's paying attention and watching and, you know, telling the stories of the streets. So I sort of took that, spun it through Earl to Mickey. But the sad thing about that was like, before that movie tested, and this ties into the larger question, I was told like, yo, all that movie's coming out, all that music's coming out. Like that's not staying in the movie. And what's interesting is I was panicking and I went to the guy in charge and just said, look, can you do me a favor, please? I you know, obviously this is my first, you know, quote unquote, big movie. Can we test it with the music? And he was like, yeah, as long as you can test everything you want, as long as it's out by 7 a.m. tomorrow, which was his way of basically being like, it's coming out. And I think that comes with the sort of limited understanding of like, well, we're making, you know, a legal movie. And, you know, in a way, respectfully, like they saw it probably in their minds as like a white movie. And these are the boxes you check in the movie. And this is how you make the movie. And, you know, having hip hop and rap, like that's not, you're going to ostracize your audience. You're not going to, like there was nobody in that room ever from any of the people involved who understood the impact of Black culture and would recognize it and understand the deeper influences of how like you don't make, you know, and it changed a lot. Like the NWA movie changed things because you started see it's the same concept of like, you know, certain rap albums being in the homes of white kids and like the president saying, oh, we don't want you to listen to them or this is bad music, whatever nonsense has gone on to, you know, censor this type of work. But the truth is I knew as a kid who had lived it, this is going to reach everyone. It's not just going to reach the Black community. But it's crazy to me. What I was going to say is Tyrese has been a longtime friend of mine. And I mean, a 20-year friend. We met basically when we were kids. And I was with, I was at Tyrese's house and Rev Run was there. And if you now know a little bit of the era I grew up, Run DMC were gods. They were gods. Like,
no, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. They like, I mean, just from the sweatsuits to the chains, to the imagery, to the raps, to King of Rock, like, you know, I there is none higher. I know every rap song they ever did. Like my brain would say, I could sit here and bore you all day. point being is I'm sitting with Rev Run and I'm always like, I still can't like put the two together. And he said to me, I heard you passed on Fast and the Furious. And I said, well, it's not really that simple. I said, I just didn't feel coming in on this was right before Paul passed. I didn't feel coming in that they were going to give me an opportunity to flex my muscle as a filmmaker. I was just going to be a pawn in their game. And I had my sights set on something greater. So I didn't feel I was the right fit. And I said, I want to make art. I want to express my voice. I want to tell my stories. That's that do the right thing in my head. And he stopped me and he grabbed me. I'll never forget. He looked at me, he goes, man, you made the Lincoln Lawyer. And that changed everything for me because it gave me, even though I had received a tremendous love in particular from the Black community on the movie, just hearing him frame it for me as a businessman, as an intellectual, as a prominent figure in the Black community, it really was, he's a very powerful human being, period, regardless of his success in a rap group named Run DMC. So when I had a chance to have that exchange, it was one of those meaningful moments in my life that educated and taught me about these things. So sadly, and I gave you a lot of information, Hollywood is just beginning to try to make some change in the fabric of what it's doing. And hopefully we'll be seeing more of that. I don't know. I grew up on Boomerang and Mo Money and New Jack City. Hollywood doesn't make those movies anymore. And I can't really tell you why they were getting made at that time. And that's just, they probably, again, it's like everything. If one movie gets made and it makes money, then they'll make 100 of them. But it's a very exploitive process and system. And also you're getting more and more people of prominence in the Black community rising to power. So they're going to want to tell their own stories too. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm just someone who, in keeping truthful to myself, I want to tell the stories that I want to see. When Boys in the Hood came out or Higher Learning came out, I couldn't wait for Friday night. Friday night was the biggest thing ever. And I remember, because I went with all my friends from the basketball team in New York City. So I was one of two white people in the theater. At the end of Higher Learning, I'm because that's just rebel rousing in an incredible way. And it was ultimately Singleton that changed my life, which I can share that for another time. But, that's basically the sad story of this. And this movie in particular, we fought to get it made. My friend Don Sikorsky gave me the book. He's a wonderful investigative journalist and human being. He played college ball with me at NYU. And, eventually we got lucky. It got in my hands. And we were able to, do it independent of the system and then push it through the system. You've got to Trojan horse these things. And putting Johnny Depp and Forest Whitaker in City of Lies was immensely calculated, because what you're saying, and this will be my final piece to a secondarily incredibly long answer. I was like, well, how do I reach the masses? And that was the calculation of these two heavyweights. Bring Biggie's story through Johnny Depp, through Forest Whitaker, right? Tell the world through them, the message will get out there. That was always my theory. It turns out, I think, to be a great marketing theory, because I don't know if I'd be here discussing it with you. I don't know if I would have met Wayne and Ms. Wallace. I don't know all those things, but that was my theory, that you needed the loudest voice in the room, and they represented that.
Okay, I'm going to get to those guys, because I thought it was incredible that you even had them in the film. So I got questions about them, but you spoke about Hollywood and in pushing movies like this, pushing the Black narrative, and getting these films made. Obviously, City of Lies gets made. Like I said earlier, you did an incredible job. Where did you sacrifice? Is it, we know, because this you mentioned JFK, and I think that it's a great comparison for anybody who has watched that film. This is not necessarily a documentary. Maybe it's a biopic. It's just a great film. You tell a very, very intense story. How accurate, where did you sacrifice for Hollywood in the upper brass say, you know what, we're in the business of making movies. We gotta, I know you want to make this as true to life as humanly possible, but were there any areas that are not accurate?
Before I answer the not accurate, an answer to the question, because I think this is important, the card at the end of the statistic that 50% of African-American murders go unsolved.
Yep.
That was the first thing that you could say Hollywood, the distributors, want it out of the movie. I think
that, hold on. As far as I know, that is an accurate statistic.
It is accurate.
It ends the film. I think it's brilliant. Why would something like 50%?
Because see that you understood and you got what, if this could happen to Big, it can happen to anyone, right? It's black and white. This is not up for discussion. And that's an accurate statistic. So I was like, well, if we're not holding up a mirror on society and us as individuals, we can't let Big die in vain. You know, that's the whole point of George Floyd. Right. You know, it's justice for George Floyd is the start of a movement. It's not just about like, you know, one individual. It's bigger than all of that. So as a result of that, that's what the card and the statistics spoke to me at the end of the movie, so that you would walk away from that film and you would stop and think. Because what I'm hearing from the streets and different people that I love and respect is like, wait, this narrative that Big, that happened to my friend here in the hood. That happened here to my other friend over here. Like, and so as a result of that, the corruption and the abuse of power is so prolific that I was trying to shine a light on that rather than just make it big story and do it in a very like in your face way, but in a subtle intellectual way that left you something. And, you know, I don't know if they don't want the controversy. I don't know if it's a political thing. I don't know if whatever the reasons were, that was always a problem. And it was like laying down in front of railroad tracks. I was like, it has to be in the movie. It's what the movie's about. I'm like, it's what the movie's about. Yep. But see, it's funny. They tested the movie in Atlanta to like an 85% Black audience. And the movie tested 87%, which is incredibly high. And movies that have characters, I don't want to ruin it for people, but we're having an open conversation here. Characters that pass away or anything like that, they test typically low 60s. So this was 20% points higher. Again, like the music in Lincoln Lawyer, that's the only reason that card stayed in the movie. The only reason. Because the marketing numbers mean money. So at the end of the day, just like Big's murder being unsolved about greed and money and all these things, it's the same concept for Hollywood in that sense. They saw, okay, this kid wants this in the movie. We want it out of the movie. We think it's going to ostracize our audience. What do white people care about? 50% of African Americans getting killed. What is the Asian kid? Well, they don't care. Why does it have to be in the movie? Why do we got to stir it up? It's about this. Why it's not about that? We got Johnny Depp. We're not trying to make a political statement. It's all this stuff going on. And then when the movie tests, if you're hanging with the right people and in the right moment in time, maybe you slip through the cracks. And that's just something that sort of slipped through the cracks. In answer to your excellent question, there's very, very little, if anything, that I sacrificed as far as truth and integrity within the film, because I felt that what blew my mind and upset me was after I had finally got the book 10 years later, I went on the internet and I started doing all this research about what was the prominent theory in the world and the internet about, what happened to Big. And I started seeing the LAPD theories. I started seeing Wardell Faust and Greg Kading's theories and all these theories. And then I talked to, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell that story, but I talked to someone in the Big community about how Greg Kading had infiltrated. Greg Kading is the former LAPD police officer who had investigated the case. Well, was put on the case to be a front, in my opinion, and was profiteering off of it for years now. Had gotten close to some people in Big's camp, and then later they realized, guys, seems like he's putting a pretty fraudulent narrative out there, and it's upsetting. I was like, wait a second. So basically, what's going on in the world is that a guy like Russ Poole, born out of truth, integrity, and just wanting to do the right thing, and wants to get justice for Miss Wallace, the family, and extended and beyond, is legitimately focused on the case, dotting every I, crossing every T, doing everything that he can do as a human being and individual. The system is crushing him and pushing him out, right? So he's getting annihilated in this journey. And the upshot of how this all comes together is his narrative is lost. It's like not even a prominent narrative. And people on the internet are like, no, it's false. No, it's true. It's not true. And basically all these other narratives are being put forth, and they don't have access to the redacted files that I had through Sergio. They don't have access to the depositions. They don't have access to all the police work that I have. They don't have access to the eyewitness testimonies from the street and everything that's going on. They don't have any of the things that I'm looking at. And Russ Poole's theory, and I found through Don Sikorsky, Phil Carson, the FBI agent, who was the lead investigator for the FBI, he was investigating the LAPD at the time. His theory was Russ Poole's theory. So everything was accurate that Russ was doing. So I was like, well, I can't, as a version of my own journalist in this movie, I can't put this into the universe, number one, and not have it be like backed up by all the documentation. I can't do that. And then beyond that, it was like the word responsibility, but I didn't want to. I wanted to basically usurp the current narrative in the world through the movie so that I could bulletproof it, because it was too upsetting to me that what was in the world of the larger community was false. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And it leads me to my next question. And this is just a yes or no, because I want to go somewhere else. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet Russell Poole prior to shooting this film?
No, because I was supposed to, and he passed away 2 weeks before our meeting was set, which was horrifically sad. But for people who are going to try to poke holes in me, you got to give me 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
The date, because what I said is very controversial for people. So what's fictionalized in the movie is the stuff with Rafa Perez. I integrated Poole with Rafa Perez, witnessing the crime that they have Rafa Perez doing over and over again. So I put that together. With respect to when Forrest comes to Miss Wallace and they have Shug's, like the connection of the car and the records of the car, that's an actual factual piece of evidence. I just slid the timeline. So instead of it happening on this date, I slid the timeline a little earlier, like small things that would never affect the truth. So they're bulletproof. Because I had to condense the story for timeline reasons. So that's why. But I was so careful about you should have seen, I had a team of people. We were on set like crazy people with my producer, Jess First, and Don, and Christian Contreras, and Sergio. We wouldn't even let actors speak words until we said, Sergio, is that right? Sergio, is that accurate? Sergio, please confirm that. And then it was a crazy, I've never made a movie the way we made this movie. But I'm sorry, forgive me, I had to ask for that time, because I know there are these people looking to poke holes in this narrative and questioning it. And I can't allow that to happen to Russ Poole's legacy. And I cannot allow that to happen to, the Wallace family and estate, who's gotten ahead of this movie because they know the truth.
This movie, for anyone who hasn't seen it, and I don't want to spoil it, I highly recommend this movie. As much as it is about the murder of the Notorious B.I.G, coming to light that the LAPD is involved, Russell Poole, it's his story.
Yes.
It really, really is a man's story to get the truth out there. Russell was discredited. And all things considered, he felt like a tortured soul. Because I've never met the man, but I can only imagine he has all of these years on a force, and he is trying to do the right thing. He's being shut down by the powers that be. The narrative is put out there that he is on this wild goose chase. You coming into this film, did you have any preconceived notions about him? And at what point did you even start to say, whoa, he was right? his theories were right all along.
So it's pretty simple. I think I finally have a simple answer. It started with a book and I was blown away by the book. But again, like most people, well, maybe that's not true, right? That's what they'll say. But then I flew to Colorado Springs and I met with Perry Sanders, the lawyer for the Wallace civil case. That led me, then I went up to Portland and I met with Randall, who was a friend of Russ Poole's and had written the book. And then I had spent an inordinate amount of time with Sergio in going through all the files. And by the time I went just through and that includes, you know, Miss Wallace in New York and Wayne, by the time I landed though with Sergio, and I had anything and everything that I was and was not supposed to see. And I wouldn't even say that publicly, except for the fact that Sergio passed away. If Sergio were here, I gave my word. I never saw that. I remember looking at the Psycho Mike Robinson deposition. I was blown away. Now, this is, for those of you who don't know or don't believe me, look at what Psycho Mike Robinson is wearing in the deposition in the movie. It's on the tape of Russ Poole, Johnny playing it. What no one knows is that's exactly what he's wearing in the real deposition that's locked away. That's how to the T I was, the level of accuracy that I wanted. Because when I was sitting with those files, Sergio told me Russ's work was spot on. When Johnny's character's going into the police department and they're saying, you know, you've been on 500 murder cases plus, and Fred Miller's like, he's like, your record is crazy. That was Russ Poole's record, spotless and impeccable. So to think he's not going to do that on this case, well, you're wrong. And he did his job. I mean, he was a real hero in that regard. But sadly, his life didn't end up that way. And I think in his gut, that's why he instinctually wanted to be a part of telling a movie or having a movie be told, because he wanted to get the story out there. I don't think he ever knew or expected the grand landscape of making a Johnny Depp and Forest Whitaker film. And that's heartbreaking. But in the same breath, this whole thing is a tragedy for the world, for the Pooles and for the Wallaces. So, you know, why should it be any different? But, you know, I try to take these negatives and turn them into positives.
You know, we spoke about Russell Poole, the human being, the real life detective, cop who was committed to the truth. Let's talk about the gentleman who played his character, Johnny Depp. I know you mentioned that you wanted to bring Johnny Depp in. I mean, he takes the movie mainstream. You know, it goes from telling the story of a Black rapper who was slain to now you got to pay attention to this thing. We have Johnny Depp on one hand, Forest Whitaker on the other hand. I know Brad wanted Johnny involved, but how the hell do you get Johnny to want to be involved? And why Johnny? Because Johnny is always doing these offbeat type movies. It's very rare that you see him playing movies, you know, like a Donnie Brasco. You know he has the chops. You know he has the acting skills, the credentials. But we're so used to seeing him in Pirates of the Caribbean and so many movies where he's in character, wearing prosthetics, all of these different things. So why him? And then how'd you even get him to agree?
Well, there's always a bit of luck involved, I would say, and sometimes when you hit it like that. As an actor, I've always been fascinated with Johnny, absolutely fascinated. I felt in my gut, I always try to look at these things as a fan. I'm still that kid back from Philadelphia. I didn't change just because my profession became making movies. My love, and you brought it up, for him and Donnie Brasco, I really do love him and all the things that he's done in prosthetics, but that is not my favorite Johnny Depp work. That's not like, if you talk to me about Johnny Depp, I'm going to tell you about Blow, or I'm going to tell you about, you know, Donnie Brasco, or What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Those are the movies for me that are defining of him for me. So as a fan, I want to see Johnny Depp like that. So that's number one, why I'm going to Johnny for this role. Number two, I know that Russell Poole was, as I said, he dotted every I, He crossed every T and he was like this, like a straight arrow. I was concerned also, like, if I get somebody who is not as captivating or maybe as eccentric and unique and fascinating as Johnny, it might feel a little boring. So from a creative standpoint, Johnny's take on a detective is always going to be like a little off center in a way, a little more interesting. The creative choices are going to be a little different. So creatively he fit. And then there was obviously like the 10,000-pound gorilla scenario. I'm like, this guy is not just a movie star. He is an icon of like rock star proportions. That's what Johnny has become in that regard. So I was like, that's the Trojan horse. That's the vessel you need to carry this messaging to the world. And you know what? Johnny's first love, like mine, happens to not be movies. It's music.
Yeah, he's part of a rock group, correct?
He is, yeah, Hollywood Vampires.
Okay, so before you go further, does he know, or did he know, did he have any intimate connection with Biggie's music?
Loved it. Absolutely. It was a fan, was a crazy Biggie fan, and never met him, wished he had, but you know, loved Biggie. So like that was all par and parcel to when I say luck. His first love is music. He loved Biggie. Like I got lucky in that regard. You know what I mean? And that's some luck that this story needed, you know?
Wow. Okay, let's talk Boris. Another main character in the film. How do you get him?
Well, so again, fortuitously, Johnny and Forrest were in Platoon together.
Yep.
And they had worked, you know, and it was like a brief moment back in time. And because of the significance of Big and Black culture, I would say, and it was a very proud moment for me, but a very challenging moment. Some of my favorite Black actors had reached out to me wanting to be in this movie. And I had to explain to them that it wasn't going to work out. And I won't name who any of them are, but there are some movies that are so defining for me. So I have like a checklist in my mind, like I got to get back to that cat. Like, yo, you know, I have to make those things right for me. But like, there's only a certain amount of roles. And my theory on how to make the movie was I wanted the two big heavyweights. And then I wanted the rest of the roles to be either like actors you weren't familiar with, or like a guy like Glenn Plummer that's been slipping in and out of movies forever, and he's just a brilliant beast of an actor, or Lawrence Mason, and they're just always making it work. But with Boris, we had the connection. We had been looking at every actor under the sun. We had a lot of interest from a lot. But when Forrest stepped forward, first off, I mean, guy is such a tremendous talent. Him and Johnny wanted to work together again. He's a titan of an actor. What he's achieved is tremendous. So, you know, short of like Denzel Washington, you know, it's like, I don't think we were getting any luckier in the regard of Forrest Whitaker from that perspective. And, you know, I also, you know, you pay attention to these things. You know, people, when I was looking at one or two other actors, one in particular, one that I think would have been dynamite. And it pains me to, what?
Can we name them?
Yeah, but
you don't want to, no worries.
No, it's not that. It's just, it breaks my heart because he put his heart on the line for me, and Johnny was down for it. But then when Forrest stepped in, it was the only moment in time on the movie where the tidal wave of the you know, the grandness of Forrest Whitaker hit, and as a result, you know, that guy got washed away would be a nice way to put it. And it pains me because I'm a real fan, and he was very humble in how he approached me and all the time we spent. And it's not that I don't want to share the story. It's I just want to be respectful of him, and I've got to find a way to make that right. But my point, moreover, was Forrest was the right fit creatively. He was the right fit from the prominence he had, and he was another heavyweight to get in the ring with Johnny. I mean, when you say Whitaker and Depp, it's like, boom.
It sounds, and this is way off the beaten trail, but it sounds as a director, you're a fan of Oliver Stone. I'm noticing a couple of movies that we're referencing that happened.
Oh, I didn't even think of Platoon being his movie.
Yeah. Yeah, big movies. Platoon, that used to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Take me back to a kid.
Yeah, Oliver is. I haven't found myself going back, oddly, to Oliver's movies as much. But you are right. From Born on the 4th of July to Platoon to Wall Street. He made that one of his first films is a beautiful film with James Woods in it. Can't remember the name of it, but I'll get it. But yeah, no, he's a wonderful political, in-your-face filmmaker. Like when Natural Born Killers came out, that was an event.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was really an event. But now Spike Lee is always just top of the food chain for me. I love Spike, man. Changed my life.
You can see you mentioned Do the Right Thing, and this movie it shares the gravity and the integrity as a lot of Spike Lee's films, but in particular, Do the Right Thing. That was a game-changing movie because it was, as a Black young man, I watched my life. I watched all of the little idiosyncrasies that we deal with, the way I personally saw the world. Spike was able to capture it so profoundly on screen. So I could see where he would be one of your influences in someone who you would say, I love what he's doing and I want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think Do the Right Thing for Spike is so personal. This is a very personal movie for me because of my connection to it, but it isn't per se my story in that regard. So I don't know, as a filmmaker, I've yet to make my Do the Right Thing. I think in my journey, I want to get that out of me. It's an important one, and it's a story that I need to tell. And it's actually because I dealt with a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism in high school, oddly. Like a lot of people are surprised by that. But it was my Black friends that actually had my back, came to my rescue at times, and supported me through a lot of adversity. And it's a unique story. And it very much dials into my relationship with my cousin who passed. So, one day I'll figure out how to actually get that made and get it into the world. But, and I don't know if that'll ever be my Do the Right Thing. I'm not so sure. He tapped on something in 1989 that, Fight the Power.
Yeah,
I was walking around saying Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant shit to me. He was racist, sucker, civil, playing motherfucking man, John Wayne. And I think people were like, I think like people were like, I guess I just had a different view on the world and didn't really know, I don't know. This was like
from Philly, man. That's close enough to NY.
So there you go.
Okay, so I gotta ask you. This is kind of sticking along, with your. And again, this movie is so great, and I love the choices that you made. And I want to ask a choice in particular in putting this film together. First, Miss Wallace. I've been knowing Miss Wallace for years. You chose not to cast an actress to play her. She's in the movie. And I don't want to give it away for anybody who hasn't seen it. So I'm trying to phrase my questions appropriately so that I don't give anything away. But I love the fact that you had her come in. She plays herself. And I love just as much, although the movie's clearly about Biggie, you chose not to focus. He's in it, but he's blurred. He's only, the movie doesn't center around an actor playing Biggie.
Yeah.
And I also noticed you have a lot of real Biggie interviews, Biggie music. So you were committed to not just telling a true story, but within the movie, the people who took part, meaning Miss Wallace and Biggie through his voice and his interviews, he's in it. Yeah. Why those choices? Why was that so important to you?
I remember I took a meeting. They were interested. I don't know how I even got the meeting. They were interested in me for the Tupac movie. And Singleton had become a mentor of mine. And I had then found out that John was going to do the movie. And I was like, no, John, you have to do the movie. Like, you're the guy, right? And then John's like, nah, man, it's all political. They're going to screw up Pac's legacy. They're going to ruin it. Like, I'm not doing it. And I was like, well, I'm not doing it if you're not doing it. And then I just politely bowed out. I never got the job offer, but I was in the conversation and I just said it wasn't for me. Later, John re-engaged, which I was really happy about because I felt for Pac's legacy, that would be the right thing. And it didn't end up going that way. And they went in a different direction years later. But at the time I was really stressed because when I knew that I felt outside of John and just in my own head, nobody can make a Pac movie better than me. Like I'm going to murder this thing. But I was really stressed over like how corny and cheesy it feels when like we watch these actors portray like Pac and in this instance Biggie, and like you just can't recreate these human beings. I don't care how much they look like them or this like them. Like I don't know. It's such a slippery slope. And I felt that I wanted to keep the authenticity of these young men and pay homage to them and humanize them and not mess with something that would be what we typically see in that regard. And I think that always stuck in my head a little bit from that experience of that interview and me sweating, how am I going to pull this off? What does that look like? And, you know, because I don't know. I mean, like, there's only one Tupac Shakur. There's only one Christopher Wallace. Like, I don't know. So when I went into this, there are iconic things about the way Biggie moved and, you know, his size and the gold chain on that last night that I felt we could utilize them to capture them. And then we have Miss Wallace tells the story of the clock of life. And I thought I tried to feel that it would be powerful to lay over that voice to bring the presence of his mom, because he's basically walking what she doesn't know to his death. And how heartbreaking this is, but the strength that Miss Wallace shows. And then in the car, you know, I was like, well, we got to get Biggie's audio in here. So I I recreated those conversations, you know, with his real audio. I wanted to bring him and his humanity and his presence into the movie. Same thing. The really famous DJ or on-air personality, I'm blanking. He was on stage at the Nas concert and they did a moment of silence for Pac when he had passed. And so I dropped that in so we could have a moment of silence for Pac in the middle of the movie.
Who are we talking? Is that Ed Lover?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ed Lover. Yeah.
Ed Lover.
Yeah, and you hear the gasp from the audience, and it's just I get chills now telling you, because it's just like the power of how these men, you know, and impacted indivieds across the universe. They're universal icons. I did not want to mess with that, and so that's why when I'd been familiar with the Ed Lover. Thank you for clarifying that, because you know, moment of silence for Pac. I was like, I have to have that in there. I want to pay homage to Pac in a small way. I want to have that moment of silence in the movie. And those photographs, because I had done some other stuff creatively, the Pac estate said, we would prefer you do it differently for their reasons. I said, no problem. And they said, because see, they didn't make any money. They weren't involved. I went to them and said, I want to show you the movie before it's released to make sure that you are okay with everything in the film and you have no problems with the film. Because I couldn't, you know, Pac left his legacy to them. And I felt like the best way that I can honor him was to respect his wishes and not exploit off his name, because we have something about Tupac Shakur in our movie and his murder. So Tom Wally and Molly, they were like, we would like this change, this change, this change. I was like, no problem. I'll change anything. And they were really appreciative. So they gave me those photographs of Pac, which is how they made the movie at that point in time in that particular place in the film. So all of this was just a unique journey. But yeah, I hope that it works for people. And I hope they understand that I wasn't trying to do anything other than honor them. But because it's about the murders of these men, and as you said eloquently, this, you know, Biggie being slain, I think if we start trying to fictionalize who they are in the movie, on every side, from his mom to that, then maybe we start undermining what this movie is really supposed to be for me and hopefully for the rest of the audience. This is a movie that I want you to understand lives in truth. It's not just a movie. It's bigger than that. This is a true story in that regard. So I wanted to hit it hard that way. And if you just start fictionalizing everything, then I don't know if the gravity of the loss of life sticks for you. Because at the end of the movie, when I show the image of Pac and Big together, like, that's the cats you were following through the whole movie, Absolutely. Not just some actors. So,
were you personally? I mean, because this story, it the further you go down that rabbit hole, you come to realize I'm no longer in Wonderland here. Like, I'm somewhere completely different. It never seems to end. So even as you did say that you had a chance to see some of the unredacted files, taking a look at, because, and I love the way you brought out a lot of the cops. These are bangers who just had a uniform. Yes. They had a shield. Were you even surprised doing your research? Like, oh my God, people like Kevin Gaines, David Mack, Rafa, like, were you surprised at just how crazy it got? And then, and I don't know, I'm watching the film and I didn't know how to take this one part when the police captain goes and he visits Raphael after Russell Poole. And judging by the conversation or the tone of it, it almost felt like it went all the way up to the top. I don't know if I misread that, but
you're a smart man. I've been thinking this whole interview, this guy's wicked smart, and I've done a lot of interviews now, and truthfully, I'm not a sycophant. You're very impressive. There were many, many legal issues with regards to Bernard Parks, the chief of police. And I was strictly told, like, this is the box you have to carve and you cannot go outside of it. So in your earlier question, I intended to answer that and forgot. So I had to find my way of just saying something. And I can really leave it at that. And I think you nailed it. You got it. Yeah, and the stuff I uncovered regarding that so Don Sikorsky launched the Dossier podcast, and I will make sure today that if Don has not got that in there, we will get in there. But what you are alluding to, which is very factual, there are things that I could not put in the film that are mind-blowing and unimaginable. So I will make the effort for those that are interested beyond the scope of the movie. I would suggest to check out Don's Dossier podcast, because he worked in conjunction and built it with Phil Carson, the former FBI agent with the LAPD. But you got it. This is probably the nicest moment for me in the journey on a personal level, because when you're told you can't do something and you have all this legal pressure on you, and I abide it, I had to find my way to just put the wink and the nod in there, or to hit it up. And to think that you got it, that makes me think and believe maybe other people did. So
I think if you watch the film, if you really pay close attention to it, because I was kind of like, really? I was like, I can't wait.
What's going on here?
Yeah, because it would make no sense otherwise. It's like, you got to fall on the sword here. So
I fought so hard to get that stuff in the movie. You have no idea.
Are you serious?
Yeah, this stuff was tough. I fought. You're bringing me back, man, to some painful, crazy stuff, man. I fought. There's a lot of things in there too. So because I felt like that was our job and responsibility, same thing with the Amir Muhammad stuff.
Absolutely.
Stuff is tricky stuff.
Nah, and again, it feels like when you go down this rabbit hole, you have no idea just how deep it gets. It's almost unbelievable. And because of that, you know, it's almost like this crime will never be solved. It can't be. It will just, uh, it will uncover just way too many things that people need to keep secret.
Yeah, it does not serve the larger, greater, you know, LAPD and the city. But I'd like to believe we solved it in the movie.
Well, put it this way, you know, before I let you go, I thought it was so clever. If you maybe clever is not the word. I love the way that you put in when Miss Wallace uh, had the lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a mistrial, if I get it correct.
Yes.
But the case is now reopened, and because it's an active investigation, nobody can get their hands on those files while this thing is an active investigation. Mm-hmm. But it'll never get solved anyway. So this thing will just go on, and they'll never have, no one will ever have closure. And I just thought that was dope that you put that in there, because again, that's one of those legal loopholes.
Yeah. You know, whenever I was going through these things, there were moments where I was like, wait, what does this mean? Or like, even if I think I know what a mistrial is, I still got to go look it up or ask Sergio, hey man, can you explain this to me? Like, you know, my parents having, you know, legal background, like talking to my pops being like, can you explain? So I realized, well, wait a second. If I'm trying to figure, and this was not just one, there was many of these things. Like if I'm trying to figure these things out, I got to make a movie for anybody that they could just get it. So I was very, you know, much trying to make sure, like I spoke to Miss Wallace about that a lot. Like we built that on purpose. So she purposefully in the scene explains it to you like, nah. It's not dismissed. You know, because I talked to people and they were like, oh yeah, they lost the case. So many people were like, they lost the case. And I was like, what? This was another head scratcher, like on the internet, all the theories that were prominent. I was like, no, they didn't. Why do people think this? And I started to die. I realized people didn't understand it. So because they didn't understand it, that basically was like, okay, we have to rectify that narrative. I mean, in a small way, I did that with Wardell Faust. Like Wardell Faust was never like, you know, I mean, he wasn't in the original screenplay I got. I understood it was in the book. It was the LAPD's theory. But that's why, you know, I sort of baked that into the conversation Forrest has. You know, and I did it as the audience, right? So he hears from the police officer, this case is closed, Wardell Faust. He's like, oh, I'll go find him. And then you're like, boom, he's dead. And then, you know, you're the Jack, right? At that moment, the audience is with Jack, but then he takes it back to Johnny. And if you look at it, what does Johnny's character do? He explains it.
Correct.
So there's a lot of that in the movie because I'm like, how you got to explain the Wardell Faust thing. You can't just like, so it's similar connective tissue. Like there was a lot of things I was like, people don't understand this. We have to explain it. So I had to find savvy ways, clever, good word, ways to like Trojan horse those little things in and get them in and like make sure they were clear for people and dummy proof, you know, like make sure they really, because if you get confused in a movie and you're thinking about that while the movie's moving ahead, I failed at my job.
No, you did an excellent job. You did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you, man.
You really did.
Thank you.
And I wasn't just saying that at the top of this interview. I really enjoyed it. I thought you told a very cohesive story. You talking about explaining, we're also talking about, you know, things being suppressed. Can you explain to me as the audience, this movie, it wasn't shot yesterday. What took so long for this movie to see the light of day?
We were in what I considered to be an ideal situation to have this movie released. The distributor Open Road, run by a wonderful man, Tom Ortenberg, who had released Spotlight and won awards with it. I felt that there was no better distributor to get the movie into the world. Unfortunately, that company was owned by, actually, I believe AMC Theaters. And it was like the first venture for them. And for whatever reason, they wanted to move on in their business end. And we were sort of caught in that. And that company got sold and the company was sold to went bankrupt. So that was the beginning of the end of a lot of problems. And the movie was like caught in this legal mess. Just because of my experience prior to the movie and then after, there was a million other things happening that I felt, could I sit here and actually explain them in a manner that you would say, I get that? There's just a lot of, you understand things operate at a higher level. I think there was a lot of people that did not want this movie to come out. I think that was black and white to me. And I think those people, some of them are incredibly influential. And I think that was par and parcel to the other problems this movie was having. You know, Johnny was going through some really difficult stuff, which didn't make it any easier as well. And, you know, I guess it was just par for the course that this suppressed story would be suppressed for longer. It is really some type of small miracle. I still can't believe the movie's out. I honestly, I don't even, it is also because of I haven't really been out in the world. So it's like, you know, I had a moment where I gave somebody my credit card at a hotel and they took it and they rang me in and they were handing it back to me and their hand was shaking. And I was looking down. So I just saw the shaky hand. And I looked up to see what was wrong. And they were like, oh, you directed The Lincoln Lawyer. And I was like, you know, first of all, I'm not McConaughey, you know, I just made the, you know, but it obviously, like, I don't really have any inclination or understanding because I'm not like interacting in the world because of the, you know, of the way the world is today, of who's seen the movie, who hasn't. I mean, I see things on the internet. I know we were #1 on iTunes for a week, which was amazing, but then you don't know the other site. So it's a weird thing. I just stand by this, and I appreciate your time, and I'm so honored to be here and chat with you. I feel that the story of the movie, whether you like the movie or not, and I've been criticized by people very close to me. They're like, why would you ever say if you like the movie or not? I'm like, because it's like chocolate or vanilla. Some people are going to watch the movie and not like it. Some people politically are not going to be aligned with what the movie are going to say. Like, there's going to be a million and one things that I can't control. But I feel like the messaging of the movie and the story needed to be told. And I feel that those things are important. And that's why I told this story. And that's why I feel like, whatever, if you don't like it, you still got the message, you know? And to me, that's important because I've seen that in the reviews. Like, I've really been astonished, and it's heartbreaking. And you're seeing white privilege, you know, because people, like, it's hard for them to accept the concept of white privilege. Mm-hmm. It's like a really hard thing for people to accept. And when you look at like the reviews are actually, it's like literally 50%. It's 50% Rotten Tomato. So it's a Rotten Tomato, whatever it is. And what is interesting to me, like, yeah, do I think without the Johnny thing, there'd probably be a 10-point swing. So say it's 60%. But I'm like, if I'm reviewing this movie and let's say I watch it and I hate it, my review would be like, I hate this movie and these are the reasons I hate it. But this is an important story that needed to be told. And here are the reasons why it's important. So when you are sitting and you're writing your review and you're talking about that Johnny Depp's personal life, or you're talking about something with the movie that's bad, I'm like, are you not listening? Are you not getting the messaging? Are you not realizing that what's going on in the world today with George Floyd and the trial and all these things? Like, this is where the world's at. This is what the movie is speaking to and is about. Are you not paying attention? And that's the heartbreaking thing to me that is really, really disheartening when I look at the people who've been given an opportunity to comment or speak on the movie, that they are so unable or privileged to not see that the movie is about something important. Hey, you don't like me as a director? All right, so be it. You don't like what the movie is, or you don't like the film, or you don't think I'm a good filmmaker, or you don't like Johnny Depp, so be it. But are you paying attention? That is the shit that drives me insane. Like, it should be like, movie sucks, but this thing is important. And that to me is what is the most troubling in being like stuck at home and just relying on the internet, you know, but maybe in a pervasive way, it's hitting the streets and people are taking it in and people are talking because that's what it's meant to do. And I hope it does do that. And maybe we can get it in the news cycle because again, it's not, I'm going to go make other movies. Like my life is going to move on. So it's not about me. I'm not on this show with you, although I really appreciate you asking about me and I'm honored to talk about this. And, you know, I'm thinking like, man, I want to get to know this guy more. I'm actually a big fan of yours, your story and Bad Boy and how you came up. And I met Andre Harrell and all these things about you I'm super fascinated by. So I've mad respect for you. And Wayne also, you know, hit me on the other side and was, you know, really happy we were chatting. And like Wayne's like, he says, go left. I'm very hard to corral. You can't corral me. I'm very challenging that way. Wayne says, go left. I go, okay, no problem. And then all of a sudden the train goes by and you're like, wait, it's a good thing I didn't hesitate because if you did, you were going to get hit by the train. Like that's Wayne, you're okay. So, you know, all for me in this journey is like, I'm just trying to get the messaging out. I'm trying to get people, if somebody's like, oh, there's some white dude on that show talking about like, you know, the importance of Black lives. I'm like, yeah, because this is important shit. Yeah. And for me, that's what it's about. That's what the movie's about. I don't want Biggie's life to be lost in vain. I don't want Pac's life to be lost in vain. I feel it's so painful when I had to call Miss Wallace to discuss this with her, you know, because like, I'm like, this woman lost her son. Like no mother should ever, 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 ever. You see these mothers on television crying about the loss of sons at the hands of police and things that are going on. Like this stuff is unacceptable. We have to hold ourselves as individuals and institutions accountable and to a higher standard. And that's why I'm doing the interviews and dedicating the time and fighting for what I believe in. And, you know, do I think that I myself am going to create change? No, I'm not an idiot. But I also know that maybe I can spark a conversation that can spark a conversation and that can spread.
You know, it's so interesting that you just shared your perspective because and I was choosing to leave this part out of the interview. I don't know if it was intent on your part, but given our current socio-political climate that we're living in, you were way ahead of the curve. Like this movie, it truly attacks some of the things that are going on right now here today. Like this movie could have been shot now with some of the areas that you chose to focus on. So just listening to you speak, you're clearly someone that this means something, you know, beyond being a director. Beyond making film, this matters to you. Equality, Black lives, respect for one another as human beings. And it really did come out in the film. It's just interesting because the film was shot and, you know, we're dealing with some of these issues today. You could have literally shot this movie today and everybody would have been right on, Brad, you got it right.
You're
so
right.
I don't know if it was intentional on your part.
I try to follow my heart and I land on my feet is what I've learned. When I don't follow my heart, I land upside down. It's taken a lot of mistakes to figure that part out. What really blew my mind was I made the movie from my gut and with my heart. And so during the pandemic and spending an inordinate amount of time just listening to D Nice, which was saving my life. I got to thank that man every day. My dream is I get a shout out on like D-Night. Like I was just like, I would enter the room and be like, can I just get a shout out? I know you don't know who I am, but like, I don't know why I actually care about something that crazy. I'm so stupid sometimes.
D-Nice got us through this pandemic, man.
Oh my God.
D-Nice.
But my point in bringing it up is like, you know, you could lose your mind during that thing. And I wasn't losing my mind. I was working out in my house. I was listening to D-Nice. And at one moment, I don't know why, I picked up the copy of the movie I had and I took a look at it. And I don't know why, maybe to survive, I had disconnected from it in a way. I don't know where my brain was at, but I started watching it and I was like, oh my God, like this is going on today. This is going on today. I was like, oh my God, this movie's so relevant.
Yes, it
I'm like,
is.
I didn't even, these weren't, I promise you, these weren't really like, I mean, maybe at the time they were conscious choices, but I was just really, really, really following my heart of what I thought the story was. So for example, the opening doc piece that sort of gives you history of OJ and Rodney
Yeah.
King and like who Biggie was and who Pac was. Oh my God, they fought and railed against me that had to come out of the movie. Everybody wanted that out of the movie. They can't have that in a movie. You have no idea. And I was like, no. I was like, you have to, I said, context is everything. You have to contextualize what was going on in the world, what was going on with the LAPD. You have to understand the impact of Rodney King. You have to understand the OJ. You have to understand Cochran's involvement in these things. And then you have to understand who Biggie and Pac were and this connection. And I understand many people will come knowing, but what about those who don't? You know, and I said, I want to pay homage to them as a fan. There's a moment for me, I geek out every time, you know, when you see Pac on stage and that unique footage we found, or when you see Biggie and the song goes off. So for me, context was everything. And I was just following my heart and my gut in making the movie. And I don't know, I'm too close to it. So there were things I wanted to change in the film before it like last came out. And the distributor, again, it was money. They were like, sorry, Brad, we love you, but we got to go make the money. It's coming out. And who knows, you know, maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have, but you know, again, if the messaging is getting out there, if a guy is astute and intellectual as yourself, appreciated and it meant something to you, that's what the movie was meant to do. And you know, I have to stop and try to appreciate the moment. It's something I need to be better at. I'm constantly striving. I constantly feel like I haven't achieved my goals. I feel like a little bit like I've been like Michael Jordan on the bench. They, you know, they haven't let me play kind of feeling at times because I haven't always made the movies I've wanted to make fully. And I think this is going to demarcate a change in time in my life. I'm 45 and, you know, the truth of the matter is that was Michael Jordan's other number. So, you know, I'm on point. I'm in a good place. And so I think I got some good things to come in the future. So, if this demarcates that for me personally, that would be very meaningful because this is the most personal movie I've made, even though it isn't my story.
Well, I can share with you, it's obviously personal for myself and so many others that lived through that time. Let me give you your flowers while you're here. And I've said it 10 times during this interview. You got it right, man. You got it right. You know, you got the story right, but just as a filmmaker, you know, I like good movies. Like, you know, I don't have the time to sit and devote 2 hours to just anything. My time matters. This is a great film.
Thank you.
You set out to do, you achieved it. Allow yourself today, live in this moment. Allow this right here. You know, I'm not telling you this just because I enjoyed your film. You did a great job, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Where can everybody find this film, number one? And number two, where can they find you?
So you can purchase the film today on iTunes, on Amazon, on Vudu, any outlet essentially that you can do a VOD or digital download. You can grab the movie. It recently left the theaters, but I think it may be straggling in some local towns if you want to try to catch it that way. But most likely at this point, I would assume just digital download. I would grab it that way. It comes out on Blu-ray, I believe, June 8th. And then it will come out on streaming, I think, in August. So I believe, I don't exactly know that the streaming thing is resolved who yet 100%. So I don't want to speculate on that. So that's the journey with the movie. Instagram, which is something that I, you know, shied away from. My former publicist insisted when I made The Infiltrator that I had to get on Instagram. It's actually turned out to be scary and fortuitous. You know, people have hit me that have been really valuable. So I'm at Brad Furman, BradFurman on Instagram. And, it's amazing the power of connectivity. And, I look at like somebody like Tyrese, who's like, he's an animal on his side. I was like, I don't know how you do it, man. So, I'm always trying to inspire. When I don't post often, but I try to inspire with what I put out there and make it personal. But yeah, man, that's it in a nutshell for me, man. Appreciate you.
Brad, again, I want to thank you for your time. In terms of connectivity, the next time you're here on the East Coast, please give me a call. I would love to sit and chop it up with you. I love your energy. I love your spirit. But more important, I just love your realness, just to keep it real.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I thank you for doing what you do, taking time out to educate and just share with our audience. And I'm sure they're going to get a lot out of this conversation. So again, I want to thank you. You are a true power move maker.
Thank you, man. It's really an honor to be here. More than I could express in words. I genuinely, I got to see that I was given this beautiful opportunity to do this, and this was important to me. So thank you so much.
Okay. You be well, buddy. Enjoy your day.
Man. You too. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. Thanks, man. All right. Take care. Pleasure to meet you. A lot of love.
What's up, guys? Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. Truly appreciate you. If you like anything you heard here today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you know anybody that can benefit from this message, feel free to share. Peace and love.